everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. This week's video is my September bullet journal spreads. I am super excited about these ones. The theme this month, if you couldn't already tell, is knitting, sewing, crocheting, any kind of like thread themed craft. I do not dabble so much in this type of crafting compared to more traditional forms of art such as like drawing, painting, sculpting, but my mom does all sorts of different crafts. She's amazing at quilting and knitting and sewing, and she used to cross stitch a lot more when I was a kid as well, and she actually like sells quilts that she makes and like makes clothing for herself, which is super awesome. Now, this took me forever because it's so detailed. As you can see, there's a lot of lines that I'm going to be going over for the calendar in particular. So, title page, pretty straightforward. The brain dump section, also pretty straightforward. Calendar, simple idea, but very intricate. Could definitely be simplified, I guess, but I wanted to do every little square as a different quilt square. So I googled different like simple quilt square, not like a pattern, but like design, and then I stole those, and that is what I'm drawing here, and then I add my own colors. So I've zoomed in so that you can see kind of how I did the line art for these. Unfortunately, the way that I choose to line some of these stuff, it gets a little wonky looking, but it all works out in the end. And then I kind of just like flip through the rest of it because it does get a little bit repetitive, and same thing for the coloring. But as you can see, this is quite intricate and detailed. My fingers are definitely sore from holding the pen so long doing all of these itty bitty little lines. But anyways, I think it turned out fantastic. I thought this was a really creative idea, and I'm proud of myself for thinking of it, because I had a couple pins saved on Pinterest that inspired me to do this style of spread in the first place, and then I like built onto it and added my own. So now we're moving on. I can't remember if I've mentioned this or not, but I am going back to school in September for a semester. I'm doing the perioperative program so that I can become an operating room nurse. And then I did the calendar there to put a school schedule that I don't have yet, actually, in lieu of doing a habit tracker. And then my mood tracker is all of these balls of yarn sitting in a shelf. Some of them don't really look like balls of yarn, but once I add the string, they start to look a little bit better. And now we're back to doing quilt squares. This time it's a little different because I had the 5x5 squares planned out, and then I was like, oh crap, all of my quilt squares are 4x4. So I decided to do a little one box border around all of the quilt squares as if they're about to be like pieced together or something, because that's common with a lot of quilt squares, is that they have a little border so that the design itself is kind of separated from each one. Obviously that's not every quilt, but moving into week 2, I have a shelf, or I guess it's a cabinet really, and it's filled with different yarns. On the left side, one of the yarns is unraveling to separate the days of the week, and then on the other side it's like the tags popping out of the drawer. And then moving into week 3, I chose to do embroidery hoops. Again, I will link the pin that inspired this idea down below in the description. I really like this one, and I recently bought one of those things that helps you draw circles. Not a compass, I don't have a compass, but it has different like radius things, and it's like a half a circumference, and then you can like spin it around and make a whole circle. So I used that to make the circles even. Can I draw a circle though, like even if the liner or the pencil's there? Obviously not. The circles are still a little bit wonky, but they are significantly better than past circles of mine. So I'm glad for that improvement, and that little sheet, absolutely worth the money that I paid for it. I think it was like 20 bucks for the sheet, but definitely worth it. And it has all sorts of different sizes, circles that you can draw. And then for my final week, week 4 in September, I chose to do something very simple and just have balls of yarn on a shelf. There's nothing to this one. I just needed something to fill that last week, and this is what I managed to come up with. So my color palette is pretty straightforward. I have, let me look in the drawer actually, see what the pack is called. It's the Zebra Mild Liner Highlighters. It's the Cool and Refined set. So it comes with 5. It comes with this blue that I'm using, the green that's on the little pin cushion thing there, the purple, the gray from the knitting needles, and then also the red that's in the like tomato part of the pin cushion. So it comes with those 5 colors, and I wanted to really just use the 4 colors and then have the red pinkish color every once in a while splashed in there. So all of my quilt squares only have the 4 colors, and then there's just hints throughout of the red to kind of balance everything out. So I do like zoom through the coloring because it's actually super boring to watch me color this, but it's way cooler in extra fast motion just to see the color get filled in. So you can see what I mean by I'm keeping the color palette fairly neutral. All of the colors are in the same tone, so there's not a whole lot of contrast between the colors, unfortunately, but that's okay. They're highlighters, so I guess they're supposed to be highlighters, I guess. So that's kind of to be expected that they're all the same tone. And then here, looking back at this footage, I was like, oh my goodness, everything is starting to look the same, but I wanted to make the labels the gray color, and then here is where I'm interspersing the red. I didn't want to make the labels red and have gray yarn because I feel like having red labels would be too overwhelming, and that's why I went with the gray. I also have this brown from a different Zebra Mild Liner set, and it's cool tone, so it kind of fit these markers, and that's what I used for all of the wood shelves. And then I didn't want to leave the back of the shelf blank, so I managed to find a dark brown marker from my King Art marker set in order to fill that in. So here we are back to the 4 colors for my quilt squares. This time around I chose to use the gray as the border piece because usually it's like a light color in the background, like a cream or a white, and I didn't want to leave it blank. We're throwing in the red again here and just coloring in those yarns. As you'll be able to see, I did add the string lines to the balls of yarn that I forgot to draw earlier. I realized that before I started coloring this. And then we're going in with the shelf. I do 2 coats, or I guess 2 passes with this brown over the drawers just so that they stand out a little bit more and you can tell that they're 2 separate pieces. But I don't know if it really made that much of a difference. They maybe needed a 3rd one, but the paper I believe is only 80 GSM, so I didn't want to go too heavy-handed with the marker. And then to tie everything back to the title page, I outlined the blue thread and chose it to be blue so that everything would be cohesive. I also debated coloring in those tags, but decided against it. This page with the embroidery hoops is quite simple. I just colored all the hoops in brown. I think some embroidery hoops are wooden. The singular one that I own is orange plastic. So keeping everything simplistic here. And then I'm just choosing my different colors for my thread and my buttons. The worm looking thing in the bottom left corner is a thing of embroidery floss. And then of course there's the spools of thread at the top. So this is the only place where I use like little hatch stitching marks in here. I was originally going to do more font like that, but it takes a little bit, so I decided against it. And same goes here with the balls of yarn. I'm using all of the colors, including the gray this time, because I wanted to spice it up and not use the red twice, but I used the other 3. And then of course my brown wooden shelves, and that's it. So I kept most of these pretty simple, but there are quite a few detail elements that could be omitted if you wanted to make it simpler. So here's my final flip through. Like I said, I'm extremely happy with the way that these turned out. I hope you liked them too and enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to my channel. I post new videos, it's turning into now Tuesdays and sometimes Thursdays, usually about twice a month. I hope you have a lovely week, and I will see you all in the next video.